Good afternoon. It's another Friday, and we're here talking about work injuries and employment in Colorado, etc. And I wanted to talk about a case that's come up several times with us, and that is what happens if you are injured on the job, you ask for benefits, etc., and your employer says, well, you're not covered under workers' compensation because you are an independent contractor. And is that going to hold? Is that a defense? And the short answer, of course, is anybody who talks with a lawyer often knows. The answer is it depends. It depends on a lot of things. But in general, I will tell you our experience is, number one, your employer kind of has the burden of proof to show that you're an independent contractor. If you're kind of doing something for somebody and getting paid for it in Colorado, the general presumption, it's not a legal presumption, but the general presumption is you're going to be considered an employee and not an independent contractor. And there's a big difference between employees versus independent contractors, not the least of which that, for example, employees get unemployment insurance. They're often covered through Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Those taxes are taken out. You're covered under oftentimes the insurances of the employer. And so some employers, some companies just love not having employees because there's a lot of headaches to having employees. There's a lot of extra costs, and so they would often, if they could, they turn everybody into an independent contractor. And so when people get injured on the job, particularly construction, happens a lot in construction. The employer will go, sorry, you're an independent contractor, you're not covered under workers' compensation. So who gets to decide and based on what? So the first thing you need to understand is that you can be considered an employee or an independent contractor under one set of laws and still be considered the reverse under a different set of laws. It's not uncommon for us to encounter employers who will say, nope, they're an independent contractor because that's what division of the Department of Unemployment said that they were, or that's what the Internal Revenue Service said that they were. They're not an employee, they're an independent contractor. And that determination doesn't amount to much under workers' compensation. Under workers' compensation, the judges make their own decisions based on the rules and the law that govern workers' compensation. So here are the kind of 5 things that we look for to determine whether or not someone's an independent contractor or an employee. Number one factor, absolutely number one, is are you working just for this individual? If your income is 100% majority derived from one individual, then chances are they're going to find that you are that person's employee. And so if you are, even if you have your own business, even if you're like Fred's home repair business, but you're only working for one company, oftentimes that one factor could be determinative. Number 2 is who is supplying the tools and the equipment, okay? If you're supplying your own tools and equipment, the employer isn't, chances are that's going to be something that tends to be more that you are an employee, an independent contractor and not an employee. But for example, I mean, if you have a chef who comes in with their own knives because they tend to be very particular about their knives, but they're still using the employer's stove, etc., again, back to the more likely to be an employee than an independent contractor. Number 3 is, are you being paid? Are you being paid under a business name or your personal name? So if you get your check and the check is made out to you personally, it's based on hours or whatever, chances are you're going to be found to be an employee. On the other hand, if you are drafting up a bill and it's, Joe's framing and painting work, and you're submitting a bill to a company and they're paying you based on that name, then that tends to be more towards an independent contractor. In And so, but if they're paying you just straight as a person, more so to be an employee. Number four. Number four is, can they fire you? Can they discharge you and not suffer any consequences? So let me explain what I mean. If I hire you and I say, listen, I want you to build a porch for me, and in exchange for that, I'm going to give you $5,000 to build this porch, and you figure, okay, it's going to cost me $4,000 to do it. I'm going to make $1,000 profit. Let's do it, okay? And I break our deal midway, and I decide to change my mind. I'm not going to do it. You probably could still sue me for a breach of contract, saying, listen, he was gonna pay me this $5,000. I was gonna earn $1,000 profit. I'm entitled to that money. Okay. If you have that kind of mindset, right, chances are you're an independent contractor, not an employee. On the other hand, employees in Colorado, you can be discharged without violating any contract claim. Now, you may be entitled to unemployment, but that's different. So that's a big factor, is whether or not the employer can get rid of the contract for any reason without any sort of contractual claim afterwards. Number five is, there's a lot of difference between if you're working for a homeowner, okay? So if we're talking about lawn care, we're talking about coming in to clean people's houses, if we're talking about working as an au pair, child care, etc., you kind of have to show that you're doing this full time before you're going to be considered an employee. So when you're working for a person in their home, you really have to show that you're there on a full-time basis before you're going to be covered under workers' compensation. So, as always, what I want you to take away is what you may say and what the employer may say is your understanding oftentimes doesn't matter. It's what the law says. And so if you are injured on the job in Colorado and your employer is saying to you, you're not an employee, you're an independent contractor, you're not covered under our workers' compensation insurance, you may still want to talk with an attorney who handles workers' compensation in Colorado to see what kind of options you may have, because it may be that you do have options as an employee. As always, we appreciate all of you calling and referring and recommending to us. If you or anyone you know or love has been injured on the job in Colorado, or they've been hired in Colorado and injured elsewhere, please have them give us a call at 970-356-9898, extension 101. Come join us on our website, kaplanmorrell.com, or interact with us here on Facebook or other social media, and have a fabulous weekend. Bye.